it had a mind, you could reason with it. If it had a face, you could look it in the eye. If it had a body, you could shoot it. Now, man is no longer the supreme being on this planet.
The organism is growing at a geometric rate. By all accounts, it's at least 1,000 times its original mass.
Nobody believes me about what happened tonight.
What did happen?
I want that organism alive.
I think you pissed it off.
The Blob. Terror has no shape.
But we do have an awesome guest in the house, guys. Let's bring up director Chuck Russell.
Thank you guys for putting this together.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for joining us. It's a long time.
When was the last time you seen it for coming out?
It's been easy, at least 10 years.
Oh, wow.
When was the last time you saw it on the big screen?
I haven't seen a 35 millimeter print in a long time.
Nice.
So I'm really excited. That's what it was meant to be, done for. When these things go digital, all the effects get really wonky.
Yeah.
This is old school in-camera effects, folks. I actually tried to do CGI. They'd already done Tron, and I thought, maybe we could do CGI. It did not work. So we had every effects crew in town, in particular Tony Gardner, who we were just talking about, who is right now working on Scouts versus Zombies. Okay, so get ready for Scouts versus Zombies from Tony Gardner, who did most of this goo. But we had every team in town helping us out trying to finish this picture. So a lot of heart and soul went into making this movie. And this was a low-budget film.
Did you do any tests with CG, or you just threw out the idea?
No, we did. We had a magical test that was a physical effect that never happened again. That was very upsetting to the producers because we were halfway through the show, the Blob had not appeared. So we literally had, I think, half a dozen different effects teams in town working with different, what we called slime curtains and prom dresses. You'll see various versions of the Blob in this picture, but the CGI one did not make the screen except for, spoiler alert, a little frozen thing at the very end. That's the only CGI piece. I got to use it all in the mask. It was the first time we put a human being in a CGI based on some of the research from the Blob, so it paid off.
How did this all come together? Because I read that you approached the original Blob producer, Jack Harris. Were you obviously were a big fan of the original, but the Blob certainly isn't one of those kind of, I want to remake the Blob.
No, I was a kid from Chicago who wanted to get in the film business. I didn't know anybody, so I said, I'm going to get a little movie that ought to be remade.
Yeah.
And I did some research, and I was passionate, and I got to give it up to the producer of the original, Jack Harris, thank you. I went to his home in Bel Air and said, let's do this movie again. And it's all it takes, That was supposed to be my first film, and the guys got me to do Elm Street 3 first. They read this script. And kudos to my partner, Frank Darabont. We wrote this first in my apartment on Elm Street in Beverly Hills. No shit. And Bob Shea got us to do Elm Street 3 first, and we got to do the Blob second. So be careful what you wish for.
And obviously you would say this film was it was a much bigger challenge than Elm Street. Elm Street's very ambitious. You have a lot of stuff going on effects-wise in that as well. How did that prepare you for this? Or did it not prepare you at all?
The Elm Street teams, we were more prepared. It's true. And I got to give it up for Freddie. I mean, Robert Englund is unbelievable. The energy, the raw energy and fearless, crazy courage he puts into that character for all those sequels, I mean, he's an amazing actor. So I was blessed with a great young cast that was ready to rock. We got to do some amazing things, thanks to the folks at New Line kind of letting me loose. So Blob was a tougher Roto, because that slime, you'll see my favorite effects. Watch out for Candy Clark in the phone booth. You're going to see old school, what's called a miniature. It was this big. So when you're looking straight down at Candy, it's a hell of a shot. I couldn't recreate it in CGI today. It's one of my favorite. It's quick. But watch out for Candy Clark in the phone booth. That was a doll. Just that tall, and 4 more was full of slime, and you don't get that kind of impact with CGI, folks. So it's good to keep the physical effects in the movies.
Going back to the screenplay that you and Darabont did, could you talk a little bit about, what kind of ideas you were, since now it seems like movies are just remade because they're like, hey, that's a movie we can remake, but you actually were like, I want this to be my first movie. What ideas were going around in your guys' heads as far as do the story? We won't get any spoilers for the people who haven't seen it, but shocked me first time seeing it. Some unexpected deaths in the movie, we'll say.
Yeah, we both felt from kind of like the Hitchcock school of Psycho that it's nice to be willing to offer up your best people early, or people you wouldn't expect, and I think that's kind of what horror is all about. You want to know that there's someone crazy at the wheel. When you start a good horror film, there's someone who's willing to take some risks. So we took a few risks. We had Shawnee Smith with a machine gun on top of an icebreaker. We had Kevin Dillon, and I'm responsible for the hairdo at the time. He never forgave me. But you know what? You're looking at a bunch of young people in all departments that totally put their heart into the film. And I think that's the beauty of some of these films you guys are putting on now. You're seeing something you don't see in bigger productions at different eras. We really got to go out there and do our best and use our imaginations and get it done any way we could. So you're seeing a lot of heart in a film like this.
The 80s were also known, obviously for a great heyday for horror, but we got a lot of great remakes. How does it feel to know that, like, when people talk about the great remakes, it's always The Fly, The Thing, and then they always mention The Blob? You mentioned The Blob, yeah? For you guys too? Yeah?
Let me answer your question. We were all about, Frank is so into character, and you'll see Jeffrey DeMunn, who's in Frank's The Mist, I believe, also, who plays our sheriff. Film fans look for Jack Nance, who was the star of Eraserhead, who I got to do like a 2-day part as the Doctor, right? And serious film fans, Del Close, who plays the Reverend, who was a warlock for real, and coached people like Belushi at Second City in Chicago for stand-up comedy, a kind of a genius guy. So you're seeing some really talented people that we got to bring in. It was a magical show for us.
And he was also in the sequel, Son of the Blob. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in the sequel apparently.
I thought I found him on my own. Because I was a fan of Second City in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to actually ask about Del Close, because you already kind of mentioned, but if people don't know, he was sort of, a lot of people think, invented kind of modern improv. So he's like, anyone who's into improv, especially when you listen to older comedians talk, was like, he was the guy, yet he never quite broke out of that little microcosm.
He was humble, but this guy was the real thing.
So you sought him out. You were like, I want him in the movie.
Yeah. I heard, and when I saw the opportunity, so as a young director, getting to work with Del and the things Del would share with me on the set. There's something about stand-up comedy and improv I will always respect. And I hadn't done comedy yet. I went from this. I did do Back to School as a producer. And St. Dennis and Robert Downey Jr. Funny, crazy people. Rodney and the Triple Lindy. But you can see me getting towards comedy in this piece.
We didn't mention Del Close plays the priest in the film.
Del's the priest. Yeah. Jack is briefly a doctor, and you know our main cast. They all did a great job.
We can talk about finding Shawnee and casting Kevin as well.
Yeah, Shawnee was a major standout. She was a kid. Yeah. Who has the guts? Who's that cute and has the guts? It was Joanna Rigg was the casting director with us, and there was just a couple of major standouts. Kevin had that bad boy thing that you can't make up with other prettier guys. Richard Grieco was up for that part, actually. I wasn't that close, but you almost got Richard, who I respect. But looking back at the casting choices, we really made the best choices we had. And Shawnee and Kevin did a fantastic job. Watch for the darn motorcycle jump, dudes, because the kid who did that, there's a motorcycle jump halfway through the picture, okay? This shit was not planned. It came a little close to the helicopter. That is real shit. That is not an optical. We brought in a circus kid. And when the bike lands, the bike locked up. It blew both tires. He landed so hard. This kid did a real Evel Knievel jump that none of us were actually prepared for. It was okay, safe, but it actually is a really breathtaking shot that I'm kind of proud of. You know, he did a great job. Check it out.
I love the look of the Blob too. You had Mark Irwin, who worked with David Cronenberg for quite a while. Just talk about him, and was it kind of like a wartime experience? I mean, obviously, because he's going to like this Blob. He's going to like Tony Gardner's effects.
Mark also did a lot of comedy. Yeah. And Mark is one of these guys who will look at you in the middle of what is cinematic warfare, I suppose, which is when things aren't quite what you expected. You've got a crane with a blob that isn't lively, you know? And you'd say, Chuck, now what will you do? You know? So I'm sorry you couldn't join us tonight because we invited Mark also. But he has a very wry sense of humor, and we shot our way through this, and we're quite pleased with the results at the end of the day.
Could you walk us through how you did some of the blob effects?
It's really interesting variety. We got to get into miniatures big time, some of the things I hadn't done before. So you'll see a mix. Frankly, some shots are more effective than the others. Some of the big miniatures are the best. Some of the full-scale effects actually worked out really well. And I give Tony Gardner credit for the melty faces. Those were some powerful. So I love the physical effects. I learned a lot about miniatures, and somehow it all magically cut together at the end of the day. We actually kept shooting Blob all through editing, getting this thing to work. So it was piece by piece.
Was it a slimy set?
Oh man, it was slippery. That stuff was, I don't know if it's still true today, but the stuff was called Methicil that we finally found, and they were using it at the time to thicken milkshakes at McDonald's. That was the core magic ingredient. And we pumped these silk things full of this stuff, and I gotta tell you, I didn't drink a milkshake after that.
McDonald's didn't want to do a tie-in with their strawberry sugar.
Well, they do. They gotta have those 25-cent things at the grocery stores, just the little slimy things. Can you talk about like skirting the MPAA? Did they give you a lot of hassle?
Yeah, we had problems with that, but you know, it was the 80s. Yeah. It's a different time. There's different rules. Although, interestingly enough, because I have my own kids now, seeing The Dark Knight, they're starting to push the PG-13. You know, they jump cut their way through it. But we were melting people full on here, pretty much, with no excuses. So, you know, people were ready. They wanted to slime out. They wanted to do it. So
this is on I'd say a short list of movies where they kill children, which I love.
It's fantasy, people. Fantasy, okay? It's all pretend.
But
no children were
did
harmed.
you get any, did the studio have any problems with that? Or the MPAA?
You know, I think, frankly, people were just for real shocked, and no one said a thing to me about it. You know, we had to do our cuts, you know, for the studio. What I care about is the child actors themselves and the real experience on the set, which was quite fun for them. So, you know, they knew.
Yeah.
And it was all about Happy Halloween and all this. So I've always loved kids and been great with them. So what you see is illusion. But hey, you know, it's a scary movie, folks. They went for it. You know, if there was a Blob, he would spare nobody. That was my opinion.
Do you remember what the inspiration was for the film within this movie during the theater sequence? And I'm not giving anything away.
Of course. The original has an ingenious film within a film, and it's quite famous for it. And it's the only thing I actually remembered of it as seeing it, I think, on black and white television as a kid. That was the freaky thing. It somehow brought it home. So we had to do it. So we did it in a little greater detail, and we did it with a little newer set of effects. But frankly, it does not surpass the original in that particular scene. I think the original was a real shocker, and the first time I'd seen that. So to get the Blob right in your seats, it's pretty cool, man. You know. So we had to live up to it.
Did they ever ask you about maybe possibly doing it in 3D?
Not at the time. No. We were not in a 3D. I would have jumped on it. You know. Maybe there's still a 3D Blob yet to be made. You know?
Well, have you heard the rumors about like them trying to do like another Blob?
Let them try. Let them try the slime. See how they like it. Although you can CGI it now, but who knows? It actually works. The paint box is getting better every year. It gets more organic, and maybe I won't totally put down CGI. But the smartest directors are doing combos. We're doing set extensions instead of just the whole set. I've been to China recently for this reason. There's some fantastic castles that happen to be there. If you give the audience a certain amount of physical effects and some kinetics in your stunts instead of full CGI Spider-Man people jumping around, there's something else happens in the heart. You know somebody went out there and had some skill, and it can take your breath away. So I'd rather see enhanced work, and a lot of the best directors feel that way. It's a great tool, but you just don't roll it out through the whole picture, in my opinion.
Do you want to take a question or two from the audience?
Yeah, I'll be quick ones, and then we'll get on to the movie.
Anyone out there have a question?
Right there. Yeah,
You might.
When is this coming out as a special edition? Honestly.
Twilight Time is putting out a Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I've heard a rumor. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'll talk to you more about it because they want me to ask you some stuff. But Twilight Time's putting out a limited edition Blu-ray apparently this fall. So they heard about the screening and they asked me to ask you if you'd be willing to participate in a commentary. Not putting you on the spot or anything. Not to put you on the spot, but we'll talk about it later. But yeah, apparently this same company that put out like that limited edition Fright Night and all that stuff.
Awesome.
Christine and whatnot.
Cool.
Yeah. What are you up to now? What are you working on?
I have a co-production with China that is kind of a big, not-so-secret project, but it's quite a big honor to be involved in the level of co-production with the groups in China, and it's Hanjian Studios, and this is a big production of 1001 Arabian Nights that I've been involved with for a couple of years. I'm also involved with some great old-school horror. I don't know what will come first, so one of the reasons I'm happy about tonight is to get back in touch with my horror crowd.
Love it. Well, we're glad you're a king, guys. Appreciate it. All right, well, I say we get the Blob going.
do it.
Ribbed. The Blob. Terror has no shape.